These are the user settings. If you don't know how to get here, please see the first video in the series to open the app and log on to the remote settings and access this page. Let's take a look at charge and discharge periods. So I'm going to click on settings to start with and then just enter the usual user unlock code. And here we've got charge and discharge period. So if we just open that and have a look at the settings inside. The first two options are a forced charge period start time and a forced charge period end time. Some users find this a little bit confusing. If you set the start time and set the end time, it means that the battery will charge between those two periods, but it won't charge from the grid unless you also set the charge from grid option in the self-use mode. So here you can see it's charge from grid. You need to enable that before the battery will charge between the start time and the end time. And that is often something that is overlooked and isn't particularly clear in these circumstances. The allowed discharge period is nothing to do with forced discharging the battery. It is just to do with allowing the battery to discharge. So if you don't set these times for the allowed discharge period, the battery won't discharge at all. It won't power the loads in the house or do anything else. It'll just do nothing. So you need to make sure that the allowed discharge period time, start time and end time are set for the battery to discharge at all. This is not a forced discharge. This is just a discharge to house loads. For example, if you're on an Octopus flux tariff. Now a flux tariff, you charge cheaply between 2 and 5 in the morning and then you use the battery all day to cover the rest of your loads, and then you charge cheaply between 2 and 5 the next morning. So I'm just going to set up this scenario in the settings. The forced charge start time would therefore be 2 o'clock because you would want to start it at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I will set that to 2. Remember to click save after each setting. So I click save after I've set the 2. And then I'm going to move on to the charge period end time and set that to 5. And again, remember to click save after we've set the 5. Now, the discharge time, it says 000 here, which is midnight here, ending 23:59, and these times overlap, and it's okay for them to overlap because the forced charge period always takes precedence over the discharge period. So essentially what this is saying is charge the battery from the grid between 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock, and at all other times you're going to allow the battery to discharge to the house load. So there's one last thing to remember, which I mentioned before. Under self-use, you need to enable charge from grid for the battery to charge between the 2 o'clock and 5 o'clock. So I'll go here, click enable, OK, and remember to click save. And that will be a typical setup for the Octopus flux tariff, charging between 2 and 5, and the battery allowing to be discharged any other time. A few tips. If no time periods are set, the battery will not power the house loads or charge from the grid. The system will do nothing. So you must set discharge times to allow discharge, and if you want to force charge from the grid, you need to set the force charge times and set charge from grid to enable. Charge periods take priority over discharge periods if the times overlap. It's okay for the times to overlap, and the charge periods will take priority, so you don't need to make sure that you start one time period when the next time period finishes. During an active charge period, if the battery reaches the charge battery 2 percentage, which you've set, it won't discharge to power the house loads. The loads will still be powered from the grid until the charge period ends. This is a common misunderstanding of the system. If you wish to turn off the active charge period, you can just set both of the times to 0000, which is midnight, and nothing will happen, and the same applies to the discharge period. In user settings, we're looking at discharge period 2. So if you click on charge period, and then I'll scroll up for you. You can see at the bottom here we've got charge and discharge period 2. So for example, if one charge slot and discharge doesn't suit your tariff or your lifestyle, you can enable the second set of charge and discharge times. And when you enable those and save them, you'll get an option, scroll up again, an option for a charge period 2 start time and end time, and an allowed discharge period start time and end time for period 2. The period 2s work in exactly the same way as the period 1s. You just get an extra set of times that you can use if you want to. Thank you very much for watching. See you on the next video.